I got one example that I can add, and it's this couple sold their land up in I forget where it was, but they sold it for 13 million, I believe. And all of the comments were, "Oh, they shouldn't have sold the land. They shouldn't have sold the land." You know, and going back in history, I mean, it was taken from us. So why can't we profit off of? Why? Why can't we sell the land? Why isn't it a good opportunity to be able to get compensated for something? I mean, people sell businesses and land and do types of transactions all the time, and Black people don't benefit from it. So why this one opportunity?
Well, that right there, that's kind of gonna lead to me a whole nother point, and I want to keep it back. But to say to that, man, that 13 million though. Imagine what that's gonna buy in 5 years. It's not gonna buy what 13 million used to could buy. True. It's gonna buy maybe what 1 million could buy, and then you wait another 5 years. It's a $500,000 now worth of what you had. But if you held onto that land, it's still gonna be worth it. Actually, it's gonna appreciate in value. So there's that, and I think the racism being the main driver of poverty in the Black community, it speaks to, or rather, I feel that the racism has kept Black people from the education, from financial literacy, from how to have the correct relationship with money, because we're taught to treat money just as a means to an end, as opposed to treating it like a seed to grow more money. And so that bit of knowledge is just kept away from us, and we're kept in this whole rat race to the point where we don't even have the time or the desire to want to search and find new information and new ways of doing things. And so that's why I think that racism, that's why I took my sip. But man, keep that land. Yes, I agree with him.
For clarity's purposes, because I'm a communicator, I think you were saying that racism has stigmatized the mindset as such that we now look at any of us that decide to make a profit as having made the wrong decision. Not that what they did was necessarily wrong, but we automatically look at it as being wrong because how racism has shaped our minds and made us look at what we have to do when we get land.
Especially when it comes to land, yes.
Yeah. That's what I thought you were saying.
Yeah, especially
Understood at that point.
Any others that agree? Want to share?
I agreed, and I'm often reminded of a quote by James Baldwin. I cannot believe what you say when I see what you do. And so we think about racism in terms of this system, right? Folks who have been kept from education, employment, housing, voting, right? Using bathrooms and water fountains, right? So there, that resource to know about saving money or to get money from your grandparents, we didn't have access to that. Because our ancestors were too busy building universities that don't even give our students free tuition.
They working on it.
They're working on it. They're not working fast enough, right?
That's true.
So that we gotta, and I'm sure it'll come up. We gotta talk about reparations. But we can't expect folks to pull themselves up by the bootstraps when you don't know what a boot looks like. The one that you have doesn't fit. You don't have socks, or your feet just plain hurt.
The strap them broke.
Any disagreeers?
I disagree.
Okay.
Two disagree. Look at that.
I disagree. Well, can you read the question again and then I'll explain why I disagree?
I'll tell you the question.
Racism is the main cause of poverty among Black people in America.
So I think at one time, racism was the main cause of poverty. But I, as an educator, I tell my students now with the resources that we have, technology, social media, and opportunities, and the way this whole society is structured culturally, racism is not the divide anymore. Social status, capitalism is the divide, because you don't have to necessarily be educated to get and maneuver in certain circles. You have to be accepted, because there are white people that can never go into some circles that some of us can because of education and money. So people now aren't just divided on skin tone. I can't sit and say that because white people are racist, I got to now neglect myself from reading a book. I have to now neglect myself from going on Google and searching for something that can help me instead of just looking at whatever is entertaining. I think that we choose the paths that we take now. And yes, racism is out there, but once you identify a problem, you can solve that problem. And our hands are not tied anymore. And I think a lot of us use racism as a scapegoat for being less than innovative. Y'all know me now.
Interesting.
Yes.
I work hard,
take
I'm
me a
sorry,
sip.
nobody gives
Take
me
me a sip.
nothing. And I do know advantages that I may have that other people don't have, but I do know things that I don't have that others do that I have to overcome. None of us get it easy.
Yeah.
That's it.
You can't tell me that white folks gonna stop me from getting what I want. I don't care how racist you are, racism is a state of mind. Your racism doesn't control me. Stop letting that be your excuse. I'm sorry. Just in my opinion.
Well, let me
I disagree.
Well, were there any other disagreeers to the question?
I disagree.
To the question?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is kind of to piggyback off of what he was saying. I believe that we use racism as the reason. I was going to say excuse because sometimes it is the reason, but that reason and excuse thing can kind of go back and forth for me. When it comes to, you say, is racism or the reason why we're in poverty, I think for a lot of people, they do use that excuse. And that stops them, you know, if I say, okay, I ain't going over there because they're racist, I just gave myself a reason not to go get what I wanted. And I think a lot of people do that. We just throw racism on things just so we don't have to take the extra step to do the things that we want and get the things that we want. And on the other end of that, I think that because we have the internet, because we do have social media, there is no excuse anymore to why we cannot learn something that we really want to learn. And then also, I say this all the time, like, we're not forced to stay in this country. I think that's the hard pill that a lot of people don't want to swallow. If this country is not treating us right, we don't have to stay here. And if we're choosing to stay here and be in poverty, that's our choice. Because we can go somewhere else where we're more widely accepted. And also, we have more access to resources and opportunities because of our skin complexion. There are some places we can go. We see there's a great exodus to a lot of these African countries, and there's a reason for that. So that's not an excuse to me.
To that, I want to say, not everyone can leave this country as easily. Some people are locked in here because of poverty. Some people are locked in here because legally they got into some junk because of poverty, and now they can't get a passport to leave.
I agree.
Poverty is a cycle, and like somebody said, we are experiencing the ripples of the stones cast in the pond of history. And those stones were cast were racist stones. And doggone it, whilst yes, the conditions might not be the same, we're still affected by those ripples. And that's why racism is still, I feel, the number one purveyor of this whole situation we got. So, but yeah, that's one. The debate. Go ahead.
I refuse to debate. I'm just about to state another reason why racism can be seen as the reason that it stops us from progressing, because sometimes we allow traumas to hold us back. And racism is just another trauma. And sometimes we become so fixated on the trauma that we don't allow ourselves to get past it. And every time we stumble, we use that as our reason for stumbling.
That's valid.
But I got one question though. So again, like, just in 2020, why are people still caught up in the grasp of they can't have certain things because they don't have a credit score, or they don't have the equity, they don't have the knowledge? Why are so many people engulfed in that type of mindset?
But so that's why I'm saying, are we attributing that to racism? Is stopping them from being able to learn this stuff?
Well, not so learn, but I mean, it is a conditioning.
I don't know what's stopping them from learning it, because I can go because the way you feel about me is not stopping me from going to look up what I want to look up and find out what I want to find. I don't know, it may make me feel a certain way.
Okay, one other question. Yeah.
But it don't hold
what about
me.
like jobs and pay?
Right.
Pay equity is real.
Right, and I yes, paid jobs, but is that the only reason? Like, some people aren't even eligible for a job because you got to first have a GED or a diploma, and you got to have some education. Some people are cutting themselves off and not making themselves.
Not those people.
Well, who are we talking about? Because ain't none of
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
Educated,
Wait,
we
we
can
got-
still talk
Because
about
and that's the thing with
She
black
told
people.
us.
Yeah, we got to move
She
on.
we're
told
not
us real
debating.
good we were not going to
No.
This is good.
But we're not disagreeing. We trying to get clarity
Yeah.
on the group that we're talking about. We're not disagreeing at all, and that's part of the discussion is that the diaspora has grown so much. Who is these black folks that's being oppressed by this racism? Because it look like all us doing pretty well.
I'm pretty good now.
So
we in
we may
mostly
get to
black
that.
community.
We may get.
Right.
My answer about it was that most of the time when you log in to like on social media or something, you see somebody flashing some money or flashing change, blowing money on dumb stuff. And I think that's from not listening or learning from their parents about how they could spend his money or put it in some wealth or invest it in something else. From just like when they say if they're coming for property, they done seen what it has done, but they're not willing to make the change or try to make the change of like making a crime or something like that. Say if like somebody they're coming for property, they want to go rob or steal something, and they get caught. Now they're stuck in this cycle of like, oh, when I get out, I gotta do the same thing or something like that. That's how I feel about I don't feel like, I know I got off topic, but it's from built up racism. It's not just like it from now. This is what I've seen from now. Everybody is just in a cycle that's in a racism or using the excuse of racism so they can't move on.
Okay.
He's speaking of like generational poverty and generational wealth. They're both cycles that are taught and learned.
But to
Yeah,
that point, I
racism
just
can
want
be,
to say
yeah.
this, and then we'll move on to the next question. There's a statistic that says that it will take 228 years to close the economic wealth gap between black people and white people. So we're not talking about mindsets. We're talking about systems that were created long time ago when we first got here that we built wealth for white people. They had like a 228-year head start on us, and we're still trying to close that gap today. So I'll leave us with that. The next question, hip hop reinforces stereotypes about the black community.
Look at he's run fast. That's it fast.
All right, we got about 3 people that agreed, 4 people that agreed. Who wants to start? Go
I'll
ahead.
start. I'll say mainstream hip hop does, not necessarily hip hop in totality, but that's also because the system that is pushing this.
The Jews.
Oh gosh.
We're gonna edit that out. We're gonna edit that out. But the system that is pushing hip hop, there is an image that is being pushed. There's an agenda behind these things, and so when we do support this mainstream music that causes, I don't know, can I curse or is this a clean?
We get it.
Calls women bitches and and talks about getting money, killing, shooting, whatever. When we continue to listen to that, we're supporting this machine. So I think hip hop. Well, I forgot the question, but
Reinforces stereotypes.
it does reinforce stereotypes. Yes, that's my piece.
Go ahead, let the young folks talk.
Yeah.
To piggyback off of what you just said, I 100%. Mainstream hip hop definitely does reinforce these stereotypes, and I've even seen situations where it will be white people that will listen to this music and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's you right there," and no, it's definitely not me. I don't necessarily listen to mainstream hip hop music per se. I like old school R&B and stuff like that. But I can attest to like listening to a song and I'm like, what? Question mark? Like, no. And I can see it in school and I can see it like in my peers just outside of school as well. It's not necessarily something that's just like controlling our minds or anything, but it does have like an effect on some of our actions and like the way that we present ourselves, because we want to be like this mainstream artist that is pushing this music or making this music. So
Read with Chris one more time. Make sure I don't get off topic this time. Read one more time.
The question?
Yeah. So hip hop reinforces stereotypes about the black community.
I feel like that because just listening.